Don't touch my ex-wife. I'll be back tomorrow. He left her in a millionaire's mansion. What happened? The mansion's security system beeped softly, indicating all doors and windows were locked. But as Monica stared at that safe, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard the faint sound of footsteps on marble. Have you ever been left alone in a place full of memories? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Don't touch my ex-wife. I'll be back tomorrow. 5 words that would trigger the most dangerous 24 hours of 3 lives, revealing secrets worth killing for. Those words came out of Daniel Cross's mouth like a warning shot fired into the Texas evening air. He stood in the marble foyer of his Dallas mansion, adjusting his Armani suit jacket while his private jet waited on the tarmac. The urgency in his voice made Monica's skin crawl. After 2 years of divorce, she knew that tone meant trouble was coming. I don't need your protection, Daniel. Monica shot back, her Atlanta accent cutting through the tension like a blade. She crossed her arms, designer heels clicking against the cold floor as she paced. I can handle myself just fine. But Daniel wasn't listening anymore. His phone buzzed with another urgent text from New York. The real estate deal that would make him richer than God was falling apart, and he needed to be there by midnight to save it. His empire was built on perfect timing, and tonight, timing was everything. The mansion felt different in the dying light. Shadows stretched across rooms that once held their laughter, their fights, their passionate reconciliations. Monica remembered the first time Daniel brought her here, how she felt like Cinderella stepping into a fairy tale. Now it felt more like a mausoleum, beautiful, cold, and full of dead things. Just stay in the guest wing, Daniel said, grabbing his keys. Don't go into my office. Don't touch anything in the master bedroom. And if anyone shows up claiming they know me, call security first and ask questions later. Monica's eyes narrowed. What kind of trouble are you in now? But Daniel was already walking toward the door, his Italian leather shoes echoing through the empty hallway. He paused at the threshold, looking back at the woman who once shared his bed, his dreams, his darkest secrets. For a moment, his mask slipped, and Monica saw something she hadn't seen in years: fear. Some mistakes take years to catch up with you, he whispered. I thought I had more time. The door slammed shut, leaving Monica alone with the ghost of their marriage and a growing sense that tomorrow would change everything. She wandered through rooms that cost more than most people's houses, touching surfaces that gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The place was perfect, too perfect, like a movie set designed to hide something rotten underneath. As night fell over Dallas, Monica found herself in the master bedroom they once shared. The king-size bed was made with military precision, not a wrinkle in sight. But it was the wedding photo on the nightstand that stopped her cold. They looked so young, so hopeful, so completely unaware of how spectacularly they would destroy each other. She reached for the frame, and that's when she felt it, the loose edge behind the photo. Her fingers found a hidden switch, and suddenly, a section of the wall swung open like something out of a spy movie. Behind it sat a steel safe, its digital lock glowing red in the darkness. Monica's heart hammered against her ribs. In all their years together, Daniel had never mentioned a hidden safe. What was he hiding? And more importantly, why did she suddenly feel like someone was watching her? The mansion's security system beeped softly, indicating all doors and windows were locked. But as Monica stared at that safe, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard the faint sound of footsteps on marble. Have you ever been left alone in a place full of memories? What would you do if you found secrets your ex never wanted you to discover? Tell me in the comments, because Monica's night was about to get a whole lot more complicated. The footsteps were getting closer, and Monica realized with growing horror that someone else had the combination to that safe. She appeared like she owned the place, keys jingling, calling Monica by name, but Monica had never seen this woman before in her life. The woman standing in the mansion's grand foyer was stunning in a way that made Monica's stomach twist with instant dislike. Tall, blonde, wearing a red dress that cost more than Monica's car, she moved through Daniel's home like she belonged there. Worse, she was soaking wet from the storm that had just rolled in, but she didn't seem to care about dripping on the Persian rugs. "You must be Monica," the stranger said, her voice smooth as expensive whiskey. "I'm Alicia. Daniel told me I'd find you here." Monica's hand tightened around her phone, ready to call security. Daniel didn't mention any visitors. "How did you get in?" Alicia held up a set of keys, smiling like she knew a secret Monica didn't. "He gave me these months ago, said I might need them someday." She set down a leather briefcase that looked heavy enough to contain someone's entire life. "We need to talk." Outside, thunder crashed like the sky was falling apart. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the mansion into an island in a sea of darkness. The power flickered, casting strange shadows that made both women look like players in a dangerous game. "Talk about what?" Monica demanded, but something in Alicia's eyes made her blood run cold. "About what Daniel promised me," Alicia said, walking toward the living room like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "About what he owes me, about why he's really in New York tonight, and what he's planning to do with all that money." Monica followed, her bare feet silent on the marble. She'd kicked off her heels the moment Daniel left, but now she wished she had them back. Something about this woman made her want to be ready to run. Alicia settled onto the white leather couch where Monica and Daniel used to watch movies, back when they still pretended to be happy. The briefcase sat between them like a bomb waiting to go off. "You don't know me," Alicia continued, "but I know everything about you. Monica Williams, originally from Atlanta, school counselor, married Daniel when he was still climbing his way up, divorced him when success turned him into someone you couldn't recognize. You got the house in Atlanta, half the liquid assets, but you left the real money on the table." "How do you dash?" "Because I've been watching," Alicia interrupted. "Waiting, planning. See, Daniel made me a promise 3 years ago, right around the time your marriage started falling apart. He promised me half of everything if I kept my mouth shut about how he really built this empire." The lights flickered again, and in the brief darkness, Monica saw something in Alicia's face that made her skin crawl. This wasn't just about money. This was personal. "You're lying," Monica whispered, but even as she said it, pieces started falling into place. Daniel's mysterious late-night phone calls, his refusal to talk about certain properties, the way he'd gotten so angry when she asked questions about his first big deal. Alicia opened the briefcase with a soft click. Inside were photographs, documents, and what looked like recording equipment. "Your husband, sorry, ex-husband, isn't the self-made man he pretends to be. Every property in his portfolio, every deal that made him rich, every dollar in his bank account came from somewhere else. Someone else." She pulled out a photograph and slid it across the coffee table. It showed Daniel shaking hands with a man Monica didn't recognize, but the timestamp showed it was taken just weeks before Daniel's first major breakthrough. "That man lost his family's ranch to foreclosure the next month," Alicia said softly. "Funny thing about foreclosures, they're supposed to be public record. But sometimes with the right paperwork, the right signatures, the right bribes, properties can disappear from the system entirely." Monica's hands shook as she picked up the photo. "You're saying Daniel stole this man's ranch?" "I'm saying Daniel stole a lot of things. And I have proof of every single one." The storm outside seemed to pause, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Monica looked at the woman across from her. Beautiful, dangerous, and clearly carrying secrets that could destroy everything Monica thought she knew about her life. Have you ever had someone walk into your life claiming they belong there? How did you handle a situation where you didn't know who to trust? Because Monica was about to learn that some secrets are worth killing for. Alicia reached into her purse and pulled out another key. This one smaller, silver, with an inscription Monica couldn't quite read in the dim light. "This opens Daniel's private office," Alicia whispered. "The one he told you never to enter. Want to see what he's really been hiding all these years." The office Monica was forbidden to enter during their marriage now held the answer to why Daniel could afford to give her everything in the divorce. The silver key turned smoothly in the lock, like it had been used recently. As the door swung open, Monica felt like she was crossing a line she could never uncross. The office was exactly as she remembered from the few glimpses she'd caught over the years. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with law books and real estate awards. But under Alicia's knowing gaze, everything looked different. "He kept the important stuff in here," Alicia said, flipping on the desk lamp. The harsh light cut through the darkness, revealing details Monica had never noticed before. File cabinets with multiple locks, a second computer hidden behind the main one, and everywhere, the smell of expensive cologne mixed with something else, something that reminded Monica of fear. Alicia moved through the space like she'd been there before, opening drawers and pulling out files that should have been locked away. 3 years ago, I started working for a law firm that specialized in property fraud. We were investigating missing deeds, forged documents, families who lost everything to men like your husband. Monica's legs felt weak. She sank into the chair across from Daniel's desk, the same chair where she used to sit when they planned their future together. "You're a lawyer?" "Was a lawyer," Alicia corrected, spreading papers across the desk like a dealer laying out cards. "Until I got too close to the truth, and my firm suddenly decided I was no longer needed." Funny how that works when you start asking the wrong questions about the right people. The documents told a story that made Monica's stomach turn. Property deeds with signatures that didn't match. Foreclosure notices filed and then mysteriously withdrawn. Bank transfers that happened just hours before families were supposed to lose their homes. "Look at this one," Alicia said, pointing to a deed dated 5 years ago. "The Martinez family. 5 generations on that land." Daniel swooped in during their hardest time, offered to help with a loan modification, then used their financial information to forge documents that transferred ownership to one of his shell companies. Monica picked up the paper with trembling hands. The address was familiar. It was the site of one of Daniel's most successful shopping centers, the place where he'd taken her for their second anniversary dinner, proud of his latest accomplishment. "Where's the Martinez family now?" Monica whispered. "Homeless. The father had a heart attack 6 months after they lost the ranch. The mother works 3 jobs to keep their kids in school." Alicia's voice was cold as winter wind. "But hey, at least Daniel got to build a Starbucks where their kitchen used to be." As they worked through the files, Monica began to see the pattern. Daniel didn't just steal 1 or 2 properties. He'd built an entire system. Fake loan companies, forged documents, bribed officials. The man she'd married, the man she trusted with her heart, was nothing more than a thief in an expensive suit. "Why are you showing me this?" Monica asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Alicia was quiet for a long moment, organizing papers with the precision of someone who'd spent years building a case. When she finally looked up, her eyes held a pain that Monica recognized, the specific hurt that comes from being betrayed by someone you loved. Because tomorrow, when Daniel gets back from New York, he's planning to liquidate everything and disappear. New identity, new life, new victim to charm and destroy. And all of this, she gestured at the evidence spread across the desk, disappears with him. The air in the office felt thick, suffocating. Monica could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, drowning out the sound of rain against the windows. "How do you know what he's planning?" Instead of answering, Alicia pulled out her phone and played a recording. Daniel's voice filled the room, casual and confident. "By the time anyone figures out what happened, I'll be sipping drinks on a beach in the Cayman Islands. The trail ends in Dallas." Monica recognized the voice on the other end, Daniel's business partner, Marcus. What about Monica? She might ask questions. Daniel's laugh made Monica's skin crawl. "Monica thinks she knows me, but she only knows what I wanted her to see. She's too trusting, too naive. Always has been." The recording ended, leaving the office in terrible silence. Monica felt like she was drowning, pulled under by waves of betrayal and disgust. The man she'd shared a bed with, made plans with, almost had children with, thought she was nothing more than a useful fool. But as she stared at the evidence of Daniel's crimes, one file caught her eye. Her hand shook as she opened it, and what she found inside made her blood turn to ice. What's worse, discovering your ex was a criminal or realizing you benefited from their crimes? Have you ever learned something that changed everything you thought you knew? Because Monica was about to discover that this case was about to become very, very personal. The file contained her own family's name, her childhood address in Atlanta, and documents that proved Daniel hadn't just stolen from strangers. He'd targeted the people Monica loved most. She married a man who saved her family's home, only to discover he was the one who tried to steal it first. The file felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in Monica's hands. Her family's address stared back at her from documents that should never have existed, paperwork that turned her entire love story into a lie. The Williams family home on Peachtree Street, the place where she grew up, where her grandmother still lived, where 3 generations of her family had built their lives. It was all here, marked for theft. No, Monica whispered, but the evidence was right there in black and white. Loan modification papers with her father's forged signature. A foreclosure notice dated 2 months before she met Daniel. Transfer documents that would have given Daniel ownership of her grandmother's house for a fraction of its value. Now you're starting to understand, Alicia said softly. Daniel didn't meet you by accident at that charity event. He targeted you because your family was already on his list. Monica's mind raced back to that night 5 years ago. The hospital fundraiser, where Daniel had charmed her with stories about his difficult childhood, his determination to help families keep their homes. He'd seemed so genuine when he offered to help her family restructure their mortgage, so generous when he made their financial problems disappear. He saved us, Monica said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew how naive she sounded. He created the problem, then swooped in to solve it, Alicia corrected. Classic command move. Create the crisis, then become the hero. Your family never needed saving until Daniel started the foreclosure process using forged documents. The room tilted around Monica. She gripped the edge of the desk, fighting the urge to throw up. Every romantic gesture, every expensive gift, every moment when Daniel had seemed too good to be true, it was all built on lies. Her family's gratitude, her grandmother's weekly prayers for the angel who saved their home, her own guilt about leaving such a generous man. It was all based on Daniel solving a problem he'd created in the first place. Why didn't he just take the house? Monica asked. Why go through the charade of marrying me? Alicia pulled out more files, spreading them across the desk like a dealer showing a winning hand. Because a theft that big would have raised red flags. But a generous businessman helping his girlfriend's family? That's just a beautiful love story. Plus, marrying you gave him a perfect cover. Who's going to investigate a man whose wife vouches for his character? Monica stood up abruptly, pacing to the window where rain continued to assault the glass. In the reflection, she could see Alicia watching her with something that might have been sympathy. You said you used to be a lawyer. What happened? I got assigned to investigate a case involving missing property deeds in Atlanta. 3 families, all foreclosed on by the same shell company, all with paperwork that didn't quite add up. Alicia's voice grew bitter. Your family was supposed to be case number 4. Supposed to be? Daniel must have realized we were getting close. Suddenly, your family's foreclosure was reversed. Their debt mysteriously paid off by a generous benefactor who asked for nothing in return. Made my investigation look like harassment of an innocent Good Samaritan. Monica pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Outside, lightning illuminated the Dallas skyline, revealing a city built on ambition and secrets. So you lost your job because of my family. I lost everything because I wouldn't let it go, Alicia said. My job, my reputation, my fiancé who decided I was becoming obsessed. But I knew Daniel was dirty, and I couldn't live with letting him get away with it. Your fiancé left you. For the first time since walking into the mansion, Alicia's confident mask slipped. Monica saw raw pain flash across her face before she composed herself again. People don't like it when you refuse to move on, when you keep fighting battles that everyone else thinks are over. 3 years of tracking Daniel, building evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike back, it doesn't leave much room for a normal life. Monica turned away from the window, studying this woman who'd upended her world in the span of an hour. Alicia was beautiful, brilliant, and completely alone, just like Monica had been for the past 2 years. They were both casualties of Daniel's ambition, separated by circumstances but united by betrayal. "What's your real plan here?" Monica asked. "You didn't come here just to show me papers." Alicia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I came here because tomorrow morning, when Daniel gets back from New York, he's going to find evidence of his crimes scattered across every news station in Texas. And I need someone who knows him, someone he trusts, to make sure he doesn't run before the police arrive. You want me to keep him here? I want you to help me finish what I started 3 years ago. Your family deserves justice. All his victims deserve justice." Alicia paused, watching Monica's face carefully. "But if you're not ready to see the man you loved face consequences for what he's done, I understand. I can do this alone." Monica looked at the files spread across Daniel's desk. Evidence of crimes that funded their honeymoon, their anniversary dinners, every expensive gift he'd ever given her. The mansion around them had been built on stolen dreams, decorated with other people's pain. If you discovered your comfortable life was built on someone else's suffering, what would you do? Could you walk away from everything you've known? Because Monica was about to make a choice that would define who she really was. She picked up her phone and started scrolling through her contacts, stopping at her grandmother's number. It was time to ask some questions about exactly how Daniel had saved her family. But before she could dial, the mansion's security system chimed, indicating someone had just opened the front door. Daniel wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow, but the sound of expensive shoes on marble was unmistakable. "He's here," Monica whispered, and Alicia's face went pale as death. Daniel thought he was coming home to control the situation. Instead, he walked into a trap 3 years in the making. The footsteps echoed through the mansion like gunshots, each one bringing Daniel closer to his office, where his entire criminal empire lay exposed across his desk. Monica grabbed Alicia's arm, feeling muscles tense like a coiled spring beneath designer fabric. "We need to clean this up," Monica whispered, but Alicia shook her head. "No, this is exactly what I wanted. Him walking in on the truth with nowhere to run." Alicia's voice was steady, but Monica could see her hands trembling as she organized the files into neat stacks. 3 years of planning. "Monica, I'm not backing down now." The footsteps paused outside the office door. Monica held her breath, remembering Daniel's warning about not entering this room. Through the wood, she could hear him speaking to someone on the phone, his voice tight with stress. The New York deal fell through. "No, I don't know why. Listen, we need to move up the timeline. Have the Cayman accounts ready by noon tomorrow." Monica's stomach dropped. Alicia had been right about everything. Daniel really was planning to disappear, taking his stolen fortune and leaving his victims with nothing but empty promises and forged paperwork. The door handle turned. Daniel stepped into his sanctuary expecting solitude and found his 2 biggest problems sitting side by side like old friends. For a moment, his practiced charm faltered, revealing the calculating predator underneath. His eyes moved from Monica to Alicia to the files spread across his desk, and Monica watched him realize that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. "Well," he said, closing the door behind him with deliberate calm. "This is unexpected." He looked older than when he'd left that morning, gray threading through his dark hair more prominently in the harsh desk light. The expensive suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched when he saw his secrets laid bare. "Hello, Daniel," Alicia said, rising from her chair like a queen addressing a servant. "Surprise." Monica had seen Daniel handle hostile business negotiations, angry investors, even death threats from people he cheated. But she'd never seen him look afraid until this moment. His eyes flicked to the papers on his desk, calculating how much damage had been done. "Monica, sweetheart," he said, switching tactics and moving toward her with that old familiar smile. "I can explain everything. This woman is unhinged, obsessed with destroying me because I wouldn't give in to her demands." "What demands?" Monica asked, standing up to face him. Even after everything she'd learned, part of her still responded to his voice, his presence, the magnetic charm that had drawn her in 5 years ago. She's been stalking me for years, Daniel continued, reaching out to touch Monica's arm. His fingers were warm, familiar, and for a split second, she almost let herself believe him. Making up stories, forging documents, trying to frame me for crimes I never committed. But then Monica looked at the papers again. Her family's real signatures compared to the forged ones. Bank records showing exactly when and how Daniel had manipulated their finances. Evidence that was too detailed, too specific to be fabricated. Is that what you told yourself? Monica asked, pulling away from his touch. That it wasn't real because you didn't get caught. Daniel's mask slipped entirely. The charming businessman disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. You don't understand how the world works, Monica. You never did. Nice families like yours, they get what they have because men like me do the dirty work. I just made sure I got paid for it. You destroyed families, Alicia said, moving to stand beside Monica. Children lost their homes because of you. Elderly people died in poverty because you stole their life savings. I provided opportunities, Daniel shot back. Real estate development, job creation, economic growth. So what if a few people got displaced? That's how progress works. Monica stared at the man she'd once planned to have children with, seeing him clearly for the first time. There was no remorse in his voice, no acknowledgement that his victims were real people with real lives. To him, they were just obstacles to profit. The Martinez family, Monica said quietly. Tell me about them. Daniel shrugged, loosening his tie like they were discussing the weather. Business is business. If they couldn't make their payments, someone else was going to take that land eventually. At least I put it to good use. Their son was 8 years old, Alicia said. He drew pictures of the horses he had to leave behind. His teacher said he stopped talking for 6 months after they lost the ranch. Not my problem. Those 3 words hit Monica like a slap. The man she'd loved, the man she'd trusted with her heart and her family's safety, felt nothing for the lives he'd destroyed. He'd used her grandmother's gratitude to cover his tracks, built his empire on other people's dreams, and slept peacefully in their bed while families suffered because of his greed. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Daniel heard them too, his head tilting like a predator sensing danger. You called the cops? He asked Alicia, but his eyes were on Monica. I did, Monica said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. 20 minutes ago, while you were confessing to multiple felonies. Daniel's face went white. He lunged toward his desk, probably hoping to destroy evidence, but Alicia was faster. She grabbed the most damaging files and held them against her chest like armor. It's over, Daniel, Monica said. The victims, the forgeries, the shell companies, all of it. The people you hurt deserve justice. The sirens were right outside now, red and blue lights, painting the office walls like a crime scene. Daniel looked between the 2 women who'd brought down his empire, and Monica saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Respect. Have you ever been caught between loyalty to someone who hurt you and doing what's right? What would make you choose justice over comfort? Because Monica had just learned that sometimes love means holding people accountable for their choices. As police footsteps echoed through the mansion, Monica realized the sirens weren't just coming for Daniel. They were coming for Alicia too, and the truth about this night was far more complicated than either woman had admitted. The police weren't coming to arrest Daniel. They were coming to arrest Alicia, and Monica finally understood she'd been played by master. Alicia Chun, the lead detective announced as 3 officers filed into Daniel's office. You're under arrest for breaking and entering, theft of documents, and violation of a restraining order. Monica's world tilted sideways. Wait, what restraining order? Detective Rodriguez, a tired-looking man in his 50s, pulled out a folder thick with legal papers. Ms. Chen has been stalking Mr. Cross for 18 months. She's broken into his properties, harassed his business partners, and made multiple threats against his life. That's not true, Monica said, but doubt was already creeping in. How had Alicia gotten those keys? How did she know so much about Daniel's private business? Why hadn't she gone to the police with evidence of crimes instead of playing elaborate games? Alicia didn't resist as the officers cuffed her hands behind her back. Instead, she smiled at Monica with something that looked almost like pity. Check the dates on those documents, honey. Look at when they were really created. Don't listen to her, Daniel said, moving closer to Monica. His hand found her lower back, that familiar possessive touch that once made her feel protected. She's been trying to destroy me for years. Tonight, she finally went too far. But Monica was already looking at the papers scattered across Daniel's desk. The dates didn't make sense. Some documents showed timestamps from tonight, others from weeks ago. As she looked closer, she realized half the evidence Alicia had shown her was fake, sophisticated fakes, but fakes nonetheless. You lied to me, Monica whispered. I told you what you needed to hear, Alicia replied as the officers led her toward the door. Sometimes the truth isn't enough to get justice. Sometimes you have to create your own truth. Detective Rodriguez turned to Daniel with the kind of respect rich men always got from law enforcement. Mr. Cross, we're sorry about this. We've been tracking Ms. Chen's activities for months. Breaking into your home tonight violated multiple court orders. I understand you're just doing your job, Daniel said, playing the gracious victim perfectly. But I'm concerned about what she might have told my ex-wife. Alicia can be very convincing when she wants to be. Monica felt sick, not because Alicia had lied, but because some of those documents had looked real. The signatures, the bank records, the recordings, you couldn't fake everything that perfectly, which meant Alicia was telling the truth about some things, lying about others, and Monica had no idea how to tell the difference. Ma'am, Detective Rodriguez said to Monica, did Ms. Chen make any threats against you tonight? Did she try to coerce you into any illegal activities? Monica looked at Daniel, whose eyes held a warning she recognized from their marriage. Keep quiet. Don't ask questions. Trust me to handle everything. 4 or 5 years, she'd followed that look, and it had led her to this moment, standing in a room full of lies, unsure who to believe. She didn't threaten me, Monica said carefully, but I think there are things about this situation that need investigating. Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Monica's been through a traumatic evening. She's confused. I'm not confused, Monica shot back. I'm tired of being treated like I can't handle the truth. As the police prepare to leave with Alicia, the woman turned back one last time. Monica, look in a wine cellar. Behind a 1982 Bordeaux. Some truths can't be faked. The officers led her away, leaving Monica alone with Daniel and a dozen questions she was afraid to ask. The mansion felt different now. Not like a sanctuary or a prison, but like a stage where everyone was playing roles they didn't quite believe in. What's in the wine cellar? Monica asked. Daniel's laugh sounded forced. Probably more of her planted evidence. Monica, you can't seriously believe anything that woman told you. She's mentally unstable. The court documents prove it. But Monica was already walking toward the door. She'd spent 2 years after their divorce wondering if she'd been too harsh, if she'd given up on their marriage too easily. Tonight, she'd learned that Daniel was either a criminal or the victim of an elaborate frame job. Either way, she needed to know which man she'd really married. The wine cellar was Daniel's pride and joy, temperature-controlled, and worth more than most people's houses. Bottles that cost thousands of dollars lined the walls like sleeping soldiers. Monica found the 1982 Bordeaux section and started moving bottles, looking for anything that seemed out of place. Behind a dusty bottle worth more than her car, her fingers found a USB drive taped to the wall. Monica, don't. Daniel's voice came from the cellar doorway. He'd followed her down, and in the dim light, he looked older, wearier. Some things are better left alone. Is it true? She asked, holding up the drive. Any of it? Daniel leaned against the doorframe, studying her face like he was seeing her for the first time. Truth is complicated. Yes, I've bent some rules. Yes, I've profited from other people's misfortune, but I never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. Who decides who deserves it? People who understand how the world really works. Monica plugged the USB into her phone. Video files filled the screen. Security footage from Daniel's office, recordings of phone calls, bank transfers that painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning years. But what made her hands shake wasn't the evidence of crimes. It was seeing Daniel and Alicia together in his office, clearly working together, planning something that involved Monica. When everyone around you is lying, how do you know who to trust? Have you ever been in a situation where every choice seemed wrong? Because Monica was about to discover that in this game, she wasn't a player, she was the prize. The final video on the drive was time-stamped from 6 months ago. It showed Daniel and Alicia in passionate embrace, and Monica realized she'd been wrong about everything. With police at the door and lies crumbling around her, Monica made a choice that would define who she really was. The video played on Monica's phone screen like a knife twisting in her chest. Daniel and Alicia, bodies pressed together against the office wall where Monica had found the evidence tonight. But this wasn't just physical attraction. They moved together like partners, like conspirators, like people who'd been planning something for a very long time. You want to explain this? Monica asked, holding up the phone so Daniel could see his own betrayal playing in high definition. Daniel's shoulders sagged like a man finally tired of carrying lies. It started as business. She really was investigating my properties, and she really did lose her job because of it. But when she approached me 6 months ago, we realized we could help each other. Help each other do what? Make you strong enough to leave me. Monica's laugh came out sharp and bitter. What are you talking about? Daniel sat down on a wine crate, looking every one of his 46 years. You spent our entire marriage making excuses for me, Monica. Defending choices you knew were wrong, ignoring red flags because you loved me. Even after our divorce, you still thought I was basically a good man who'd lost his way. So you decided to prove otherwise by framing yourself for crimes. Some of those crimes are real, Daniel admitted. Not the dramatic ones Alicia showed you tonight, but plenty of gray area deals that would hold up in court if anyone cared to look closely. The Martinez family, the forged signatures, the shell companies, all real. Monica felt like she was drowning in revelations. Why are you telling me this? Because in about 10 minutes, real FBI agents are going to show up at this house with real warrants. I've been under federal investigation for 8 months, and tonight was supposed to be my last chance to liquidate assets before they froze everything. The wine cellar suddenly felt too small, too dark. Monica pressed her back against the cool stone wall, trying to process what Daniel was saying. The New Year trip was real, but not for the reasons I told you. I was supposed to transfer money to accounts that couldn't be traced, then disappear. New identity, new life, all of it. Daniel looked at his hands like he was seeing someone else's fingers. But I couldn't do it, not without knowing you'd be okay. So you and Alicia cooked up this whole performance to what? Give me closure, to give you the truth, and to make sure you'd be angry enough to testify against me when the time came. Monica stared at this man she loved, hated, and thought she knew. You want me to testify against you? I want you to survive what's coming. When the FBI tears apart my finances, they're going to look at everyone who benefited from my business. Your divorce settlement, your family's house, everything I ever gave you, it's all going to be scrutinized. The only way you stay out of prison is if you're clearly a victim, not an accomplice. Footsteps echoed above them. Heavy boots, multiple people, the sound of a house being systematically searched. The real raid had begun. The FBI agents upstairs aren't going to be as friendly as Detective Rodriguez, Daniel continued. They've been building a case for years, and they think you knew about my business practices. Tonight's performance was supposed to establish that you had no idea what I was really doing. Monica's mind raced. Alicia's arrest? Fake. Rodriguez is Alicia's cousin. The restraining order is real, but it was part of the setup. She needed a reason to be here tonight that didn't implicate you in planning this confrontation. The wine cellar door opened, and federal agents in bulletproof vests flooded downstairs. Monica found herself pressed against Daniel's side as armed officers surrounded them, their weapons drawn but not quite aimed. Daniel Cross, the lead agent, announced, "You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering." As they cuffed Daniel's hands behind his back, he looked at Monica with something she'd never seen in his eyes before: genuine love without manipulation, without agenda, without lies. "I'm sorry," he whispered as they led him away. "For all of it, but mostly for not being the man you deserved the first time around." Monica stood alone in the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles worth millions of dollars that would soon be seized as evidence. Above her, she could hear agents cataloging everything Daniel owned, dismantling an empire built on other people's dreams. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee tomorrow? We need to talk about what comes next." Ugh. Monica typed back, "How do I know anything you say will be true?" The response came immediately, "You don't. But some lies are worth telling to protect the people you care about." Is it possible to love someone and still choose to see them face consequences? Can you forgive without enabling? Share your thoughts below, because Monica was about to learn that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. 6 months later, Monica would receive a letter from federal prison that would change everything she thought she understood about the man she'd married. But tonight, she climbed the stairs to find FBI agents waiting to ask her questions that would determine whether she spent the next decade rebuilding her life or watching it from behind bars. The truth, she realized, was the most expensive thing Daniel had ever given her. She kept the mansion not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes you have to burn down your old life to build something real. 6 months after the FBI raid, Monica Williams-Cross stood in the mansion's main hallway, watching contractors transform Daniel's monument to greed into something that actually mattered. The marble floors still gleamed, but now they reflected the faces of fraud victims receiving counseling services instead of the empty vanity of stolen wealth. Mrs. Cross, a young woman, approached with a clipboard and nervous energy. The Martinez family is here for their appointment. Monica's stomach still clenched every time someone called her by Daniel's name, but the federal court had ruled that victims' restitution would be processed faster if she maintained legal control of the assets during the transition period. Everything Daniel owned was being liquidated to pay back the families he destroyed, and Monica had volunteered to oversee the process. "Send them to the library," Monica said. "And Maria? Call me Monica. We talked about this." The library where Daniel once kept his fake awards now housed legal aid attorneys, helping victims navigate insurance claims and property recovery. Monica had learned more about real estate law in 6 months than in her entire previous life, driven by a need to understand exactly how much damage the man she'd loved had caused. The Martinez family entered quietly. Mother, father, teenage daughter, and the 8-year-old boy Alicia had mentioned. The boy stayed close to his mother's side, eyes wide as he took in the mansion's grandeur. "Please, sit down," Monica said, gesturing to chairs that once cost more than their yearly rent. "I have some good news about your property." Mrs. Martinez looked skeptical. Monica didn't blame her. The family had been promised justice before, only to watch rich men's lawyers make their problems disappear. But today was different. "We've recovered the original deed to your ranch," Monica continued, sliding papers across the coffee table. "The shell company that foreclosed on your property has been dissolved, and ownership is being transferred back to your family. All liens and debts associated with the illegal foreclosure have been cleared." Mr. Martinez picked up the deed with trembling hands. "We can go home. You can go home. The shopping center built on your land is being demolished at our expense, and we're funding environmental restoration to return the property to agricultural use." The little boy looked up at his father. "Can I have my horse back?" Mrs. Martinez started crying, quiet tears that spoke of grief too deep for words. Monica reached for the tissue box, remembering how many times she'd cried in this room during her marriage, never understanding that her comfort was built on someone else's pain. "There's more," Monica said. "The restitution fund includes compensation for lost income, emotional distress, and educational expenses. It's not enough to undo what happened, but it's a start." As the family left, clutching their deed like a lifeline back to the life they'd lost, Monica felt something she hadn't experienced in years: pride in work that actually mattered. The mansion was still beautiful, but now its beauty served a purpose beyond impressing dinner guests. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alicia. "Coffee in an hour? I have news about the federal case." Monica had been meeting with Alicia weekly since the arrests, trying to separate truth from fiction in everything that had happened that night. The woman was still manipulative, still calculating, but she'd also sacrificed her own legal safety to expose Daniel's crimes. Trust was complicated when everyone had their own agenda. They met at a small cafe in downtown Dallas, far from the mansion's marble and crystal. Alicia looked different. Older, more tired, but somehow more real than the polished woman who'd appeared in Daniel's foyer that stormy night. Daniel's plea hearing is next week, Alicia said without preamble. His lawyers think they can get 15 years instead of 25 if he cooperates with federal investigations into other real estate fraud cases. Monica stirred her coffee, watching cream swirl into patterns that reminded her of the way lies mixed with truth until you couldn't tell them apart. How many other cases? Dozens. Apparently our Daniel was small time compared to some of the networks the FBI is tracking. But his cooperation could help recover millions in stolen assets for victim families. Good. Monica minted. Whatever Daniel had done to her, to them, he deserved the chance to make things right for the people he'd hurt. There's something else, Alicia said, her voice unusually hesitant. Daniel asked me to give you this. She slid an envelope across the table. Monica's name written in Daniel's careful handwriting. The return address showing the federal facility where he was being held pending sentencing. Monica stared at the letter like it might explode. She'd testified at his preliminary hearing, answered FBI questions about their marriage and finances, signed papers transferring property ownership, but they hadn't spoken directly since that night in the wine cellar. How do you rebuild when everything you thought was real turns out to be a lie? What gives you strength to start over? Because Monica was about to discover that sometimes closure comes from the most unexpected places. The letter felt heavy in her hands, weighted with years of shared history and secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to know. 3 years after sending him to prison, Monica opened her door to find Daniel standing there, and he wasn't supposed to be free. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 in the morning, just as Monica was finishing her coffee and reviewing case files for the day. Through the mansion's security monitor, she could see a man in a cheap gray suit, head down, hands in his pockets. Something about his posture seemed familiar, but the image wasn't clear enough to be certain. She opened the door expecting a delivery or maybe another victim's family member seeking help with their case. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with Daniel Cross, thinner, grayer, wearing clothes that looked like they came from a thrift store instead of a designer boutique. "Hello, Monica." Her first instinct was to slam the door. Her second was to call the police. Daniel wasn't supposed to be released for another 12 years, and showing up at her home violated at least 6 different court orders. "How are you here?" she managed to ask. "Early release for cooperation," Daniel said, staying carefully on the other side of the threshold. "I testified in 47 federal cases over the past 3 years, helped recover nearly $200 million in stolen assets. The Justice Department decided I was more valuable as a witness than a prisoner." Monica's hand stayed on the door handle, ready to shut him out of her life again. But something was different about him. The aggressive confidence that had defined Daniel Cross was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "What do you want?" "To apologize." "Properly this time." Daniel's eyes met hers, and she saw exhaustion that went deeper than physical tiredness. "And to tell you about Alicia." "What about Alicia?" "She's been watching you, Monica. For 3 years. Ever since I went inside. She's been building a new case. One that could put you in prison for conspiracy and money laundering." Monica's blood went cold. "That's impossible. I testified against you. I helped the victims recover their property. The FBI cleared me of any wrongdoing." "The FBI cleared you based on evidence that Alicia helped provide," Daniel said carefully. "But evidence can be reinterpreted. Financial records can be made to look different when viewed through the right lens. And Alicia is very good at finding the right lens." Through the mansion's tall windows, Monica could see autumn rain starting to fall, turning the manicured grounds gray and misty. The same weather that had brought Alicia into her life 3 years ago, setting all of this in motion. "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel shifted his weight, and Monica noticed he was favoring his left leg. Prison had aged him in ways that went beyond the gray hair and cheap clothes. Because I owe you the truth. All of it. And because Alicia isn't the person either of us thought she was. Against her better judgment, Monica stepped aside to let him enter. The mansion felt different with Daniel in it again. Smaller somehow, less intimidating. Or maybe she was just different now. Stronger, less willing to be impressed by marble floors and crystal chandeliers. They sat in a library that had become her office, surrounded by legal files and victim testimonies. Daniel looked around at the transformation with something that might have been approval. "You've done good work here," he said. "Better than anything I ever accomplished with this place." "Don't." Monica's voice was sharp. "Don't try to charm me or manipulate me or whatever this is. Just tell me what's happening with Alicia." Daniel nodded, accepting the boundary. She never lost her job because of investigating me. She was fired because she was taking bribes from property developers to bury evidence of fraud. When she approached me 6 months before our divorce, it wasn't to expose my crimes. It was to become my partner. Monica felt the familiar sick feeling of realizing she'd been played. Partner in what? Insurance fraud. We would target financially struggling families, help create fake foreclosure documents, then split the profits when their properties were sold at below-market prices. Alicia provided legal cover. I provided the real estate expertise. The Martinez family was our first successful collaboration. But Alicia got greedy, started taking bigger risks, targeting higher-value properties. When federal investigators started connecting the dots, she decided I made a better scapegoat than partner. Rain lashed against the library windows, and Monica remembered how Alicia had appeared that night like something summoned by the storm. Beautiful, confident, and completely convincing in her role as the wronged victim seeking justice. So everything that happened that night was Alicia setting me up to take full blame for crimes we committed together. You were supposed to be her star witness, the innocent ex-wife who could testify to my character and make her story more believable. Monica pressed her hands against her temples, feeling a headache building. But you went to prison. You pled guilty. Because some of what I did was real. I may not have committed all the crimes Alicia accused me of, but I committed enough to deserve consequences. Daniel leaned forward, and Monica caught a faint scent of institutional soap and disinfectant. But now she's preparing to pin her own crimes on you, and I can't let that happen. Can people really change? Or do they just get better at hiding who they are? Would you give someone a second chance after they betrayed your trust? Because Monica was about to learn that sometimes protection comes from the most unlikely sources. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. These are copies of Alicia's real financial records. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, property purchases made with bribe money, communication records showing her relationship with other fraud networks. She's been building a criminal empire using my conviction as cover. Through the library windows, Monica saw a familiar figure walking up the mansion's front drive, blonde hair whipping in the wind, briefcase in hand. "She's here," Monica whispered. Daniel stood up, his face grim. Then it's time for the real confrontation. Alicia's obsession didn't end with prison. It evolved into something more dangerous than revenge. The need to prove she was right all along. Alicia Chun entered the mansion like she owned it, just as she had 3 years ago. But this time, Monica was ready for her. The security cameras Daniel had installed during his cooperation with federal investigators were recording everything, and Monica's phone was already dialing 911. "Monica, darling," Alicia said, setting down her briefcase with the same theatrical flair she'd used that stormy night. "We need to discuss your upcoming indictment." "My what?" Alicia's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice. The federal prosecutor is very interested in how you managed to avoid charges when your husband's other business partners didn't." Daniel stepped out of the library, and Alicia's confident expression faltered for just a moment before reshaping itself into something between surprise and fury. "Daniel, how unexpected." Her voice carried the tone of someone whose carefully laid plans had just hit an obstacle. "I thought you were enjoying your extended vacation at taxpayer expense." Good behavior and federal cooperation, Daniel replied evenly. Amazing how helpful the Justice Department finds reformed criminals who can provide evidence about ongoing cases. Monica moved closer to the security panel, making sure every camera in the mansion was recording. Whatever was about to happen, she wanted it documented by something more reliable than human memory. Evidence about what ongoing cases? Alicia asked, but her casual tone didn't match the tension in her shoulders. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a tablet, swiping to reveal bank records and financial documents. Swiss accounts under the name Alice Chun. Cayman Island properties purchased with funds from Real Estate Investment Group, LLC. The same shell company you used to launder bribes from Patterson Development. Alicia's mask finally slipped completely. The sophisticated lawyer disappeared, replaced by something desperate and dangerous. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. Daniel handed the tablet to Monica, who saw bank transfers dating back 5 years, property deeds showing Alicia's real name, and communication records between Alicia and multiple real estate fraud networks. Turns out federal prison gives you a lot of time to think about who your real enemies were. Monica scrolled through the documents, seeing a pattern of corruption that made Daniel's crimes look amateur by comparison. Alicia hadn't just been taking bribes. She'd been running a nationwide network of lawyers and real estate agents who specialized in stealing properties from vulnerable families. The Martinez family wasn't Daniel's first victim, Monica realized. They were yours. I prefer to think of them as learning experiences, Alicia said, dropping any pretense of remorse. Poor families lose their property one way or another. At least my way was efficient. Efficient. Monica looked at this woman she trusted. This woman who'd convinced her that Daniel was the monster in their story. You destroyed dozens of families and called it efficient. Alicia moved toward her briefcase, and Daniel stepped between her and Monica. In the security monitor, Monica could see police cars approaching the mansion. The 911 call she'd made was finally bringing help. You know what's funny? Alicia said, her hand hovering over her briefcase clasp. I really did lose my job investigating Daniel's properties, but not because I was some crusading lawyer fighting for justice. I lost it because I was caught taking money from the people I was supposed to be investigating. So you decided to frame Daniel for your crimes? I decided to create a narrative where I was the hero and he was the villain. Much more satisfying than admitting I was just another corrupt lawyer who got caught. Alicia's laugh was bitter. But then you had to go and play the perfect victim, helping all those families recover their property, turning Daniel's stolen mansion into some kind of charity operation. Monica heard the front door opening, police officers calling out as they entered the mansion. But Alicia wasn't finished. The problem with playing the hero, Monica, is that heroes are held to higher standards. And I've spent 3 years documenting every financial transaction you've made, every decision about property distribution, every conversation you've had with victim families. Want to guess how easy it is to make charitable work look like money laundering when you have the right prosecutor? Daniel moved closer to Alicia, his voice dangerously quiet. You're not going to touch her. I don't have to touch her. I just have to destroy her reputation the same way she helped destroy mine. Alicia opened her briefcase, revealing thick files labeled with Monica's name. Did you know she's been taking a salary from the Victim Restitution Fund? Perfectly legal, perfectly justifiable, but with the right spin, it looks like she's profiting from her ex-husband's crimes. The police enter the library just as Alicia pulled out a recording device. Monica recognized her own voice discussing legal strategies with victim advocates, conversations that could be edited to sound like something much more damaging. When someone refuses to let go of their need to control your story, how do you take back your power? Have you ever had to face down someone from your past who couldn't accept that the game was over? Because Monica was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who believe their own lies. Because Monica was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who believe their own lies. Officers, Alicia said, switching back to her professional lawyer voice. I'm here to provide evidence of ongoing financial crimes being committed by Monica Williams Cross. But Daniel was already handing the lead officer a different set of files, ones that would change everything about who was really the criminal in this room. Monica spent 3 years helping Daniel's victims find justice. Now she had to fight to prove her own innocence. The federal courthouse steps felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Media vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions about the Mansion conspiracy that had dominated Dallas news for weeks. Monica kept her head down, flanked by lawyers who cost more per hour than most people made in a month, walking toward a building where her freedom would be decided by 12 strangers. Remember, her lead attorney whispered as they climbed the marble steps, stick to the facts. Don't let them make this emotional. You're a victim who became an advocate, nothing more. But Monica knew it wasn't that simple. Alicia had spent months building a case that painted Monica as the secret mastermind behind Daniel's empire, using her role in victim restitution as cover for continued fraud. The evidence was circumstantial but convincing. Financial records that looked suspicious when viewed through the right lens, conversations taken out of context, patterns that suggested guilt to anyone who wanted to see it. Inside the courthouse, Monica caught sight of familiar faces in the gallery. Mrs. Martinez sat in the front row, her husband beside her, both looking older than they had 6 months ago. Behind them, representatives from dozens of families Monica had helped recover their stolen property. Some looked supportive, others uncertain, all of them wondering if the woman who'd given them hope was actually another criminal in disguise. Alicia entered the courtroom like she was walking into her own coronation. Designer suit, perfect hair, briefcase full of documents that could send Monica to prison for 20 years. She nodded to Monica with mock sympathy, playing the role of reluctant prosecutor forced to expose a friend's crimes. The government calls Alice Chun to the stand, the prosecutor announced. Monica watched Alicia raise her right hand and swear to tell the truth, knowing that the woman had built her entire case on carefully crafted lies. But lies that sounded believable, lies that explained away inconsistencies in the original case, lies that made Monica look like a criminal mastermind instead of a betrayed wife. Ms. Chun, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant. Monica and I became close during the investigation of her ex-husband's crimes, Alicia said, her voice carrying just the right mix of sadness and determination. I thought she was a victim, like the families Daniel had destroyed. I trusted her with sensitive information about ongoing investigations. And what did you discover about Ms. Williams-Cross's involvement in her ex-husband's criminal activities? Alicia looked directly at Monica, and for a moment, Monica saw something that chilled her blood. Genuine hatred, the kind that comes from someone who believes their own revenge fantasy. Monica wasn't just aware of Daniel's crimes, Alicia testified. She was an active participant. Bank records show she received payment from shell companies involved in property fraud. Communication records prove she helped coordinate the timing of foreclosures to maximize profit. She used her position managing victim restitution to identify new targets for fraud schemes. Monica's lawyer objected, but the damage was being done. In the jury box, she could see doubt creeping across faces that had started the morning looking sympathetic. Alicia was good at her job, painting Monica as a manipulator who'd fooled everyone, including federal investigators. The cross-examination felt like watching a surgeon work with a butter knife. Monica's lawyer tried to expose holes in Alicia's story, but Alicia was prepared for every question, every challenge, every attempt to reveal her own criminal history. Ms. Chun, Monica's lawyer pressed, isn't it true that you were under federal investigation for bribery and corruption when you first approached Mr. Cross? That investigation was politically motivated, Alicia replied smoothly. Prosecutors trying to silence a lawyer who was getting too close to powerful real estate interests. And isn't it true that you've received immunity from prosecution in exchange for your testimony against Ms. Williams-Cross? I've received protection for my cooperation in exposing ongoing crimes. Yes, that's how the justice system works. Monica felt the case slipping away from her with every exchange. Alicia had answers for everything, explanations that sounded reasonable to people who didn't know the whole story. The woman had spent 3 years building this moment, crafting a narrative where she was the hero and Monica was the hidden villain. During the lunch break, Monica sat alone in a courthouse conference room, staring at photos from her marriage to Daniel. Happy moments that now looked suspicious, charitable work that had been twisted into evidence of guilt, a life rebuilt from ashes that was about to be destroyed again. "We need to consider a plea deal," her lawyer said, sitting across from her with the exhausted look of someone fighting a losing battle. "Alicia's testimony is more convincing than we anticipated. If the jury believes her, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. I won't plead guilty to crimes I didn't commit." "Monica, be realistic. Alicia has documentation for everything. Financial records, communication logs, witness testimony from people who worked with the Victim Restitution Fund. Even if half of it is fabricated, the jury only needs to believe some of it." Through the conference room window, Monica could see protesters holding signs calling for justice for fraud victims. Some supported her, others demanded her conviction. The case had divided the community along lines of who you chose to believe. The reformed criminal seeking redemption or the crusading lawyer exposing corruption. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Courthouse basement. South stairwell. Come alone. I have something that will change everything. A friend." Monica stared at the message, wondering if this was another trap, another manipulation in a game where she could never see all the players. But with her freedom hanging in the balance and Alicia's lies gaining credibility by the hour, she didn't have many options left. How do you maintain your integrity when someone is trying to destroy your reputation? What keeps you going when the system seems stacked against you? Because Monica was about to discover that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. She told her lawyer she needed air and walked toward the courthouse basement, praying that this wasn't the final mistake in a series of choices that had led her to this moment. In the stairwell, a figure waited in the shadows. Someone who claimed to have evidence that could save her life or destroy what was left of it. The truth came from the last person anyone expected, Alicia's own sister, who had been watching her descent into obsession for years. The woman waiting in the courthouse stairwell looked like a younger, softer version of Alicia. Same bone structure, same intelligent eyes, but where Alicia radiated calculated ambition, this woman seemed tired, almost defeated. "You're Monica," she said, not really a question. "I'm Sarah Chun, Alicia's sister." Monica's hand stayed on the stairwell door, ready to run if this turned out to be another setup. "What do you want?" "To stop my sister from destroying you the same way she's destroyed everyone else who got her way." Sarah pulled out a tablet, similar to the one Daniel had shown Alicia weeks earlier. "I've been documenting Alice's behavior for 3 years, ever since she started this obsession with your ex-husband." "What?" "Because I love my sister, but I can't watch her turn into a monster." Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Alice wasn't always like this. Growing up, she was the good one, straight A's, law school, fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. But somewhere along the way, winning became more important than being right. Monica took the tablet, scrolling through emails, text messages, and recorded phone calls that painted a picture of systematic manipulation spanning years. Alicia planning the frame job against Daniel, coordinating with corrupt officials, even bribing witnesses to provide false testimony. "She really did lose her job for taking bribes," Sarah continued. "But not from the people she was investigating, from the people she was supposed to be prosecuting. Alice has been working both sides of real estate fraud cases for years, taking money from criminals to make their problems disappear. Then why go after Daniel? Because he refused to pay her. Daniel might be a criminal, but he has his own twisted code of ethics. When Alice approached him for a bribe to make his federal investigation go away, he told her to go to hell. That's when she decided to destroy him." Monica found video files on the tablet showing Alicia meeting with known criminals, accepting envelopes of cash, laughing about the families whose lives she'd helped destroy. This wasn't a crusading lawyer seeking justice. This was a predator who'd learned to use the legal system as her hunting ground. "Why didn't you come forward before?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Because she's my sister. Because I kept thinking she'd stop before it went too far. Because I was afraid of what would happen to our family if people learn the truth. What changed your mind? Watching her testify this morning. Seeing her twist your charitable work into evidence of guilt. Alice isn't trying to expose corruption anymore. She's become the corruption. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And I can't let her send an innocent person to prison just to protect her own secrets. Monica studied Sarah's face, looking for signs of deception, manipulation, another layer to this endless game of lies. But what she saw was genuine pain, the specific agony of loving someone who'd become unrecognizable. Will you testify? I'll do more than that. Sarah pulled out a second device, a recording pen that had been capturing everything. I've been wearing this for 6 months, documenting every conversation where Alice admits to framing you. Federal prosecutors are going to be very interested in what she's been saying when she thinks no one's listening. They climbed back up to the courthouse main floor, where chaos was already erupting. FBI agents were entering the building, armed with new warrants and evidence that would turn the case upside down. Monica watched through courthouse windows as Alicia was led away in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally cracking. The prosecutor who'd been building a case against Monica now found himself explaining to federal judges how his star witness had manipulated evidence, bribed officials, and committed perjury on the stand. Within hours, all charges against Monica were dropped, replaced by a massive federal investigation into Alicia's criminal network. Monica stood on the courthouse steps again, but this time reporters were asking different questions. Not about her guilt, but about her survival. Not about conspiracy, but about justice finally being served. Mrs. Martinez approached through the crowd, her husband and children behind her. "Mrs. Cross," she said, then caught herself. "Monica, we want you to know, we never believed their lies about you. Not for 1 second. Why not? Because we saw what you did with our case. How hard you fought to get our land back. How many hours you spent making sure we understood our rights. People who really care about justice don't fake that kind of dedication." Other victim families gathered around, offering support and gratitude that made Monica's chest tight with emotion. These people had lost everything to criminals like Daniel and Alicia, but they'd found the strength to rebuild. Their faith in her meant more than any legal vindication. As the crowd thinned, Monica found herself alone with Daniel, who'd been waiting quietly at the edge of the media circus. He looked different, not like the confident businessman she'd married or the broken criminal she'd divorced, but like someone who'd finally stopped running from his past. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For telling the truth when it mattered. For protecting me even though you didn't have to." Daniel smiled, and for a moment she glimpsed the man she'd fallen in love with before greed and ambition had poisoned everything between them. "Maybe I finally learned what love actually means." Can you feel sympathy for someone who tried to destroy you? How do you balance justice with compassion when someone is clearly struggling? Because Monica was about to face a choice that would test everything she'd learned about forgiveness and second chances. Daniel pulled out an envelope similar to the one Alicia had carried that first night. "I have something for you. Something I should have given you years ago." Inside was a letter and a key. Not to a safe or office, but to a future Monica had never imagined possible. She had 2 choices: stay in a mansion that held all their history, or walk away with a man who had learned to deserve her love. The letter in Monica's hands felt heavier than all the legal documents that had defined her life for the past 3 years. Daniel's handwriting filled 2 pages, not the confident script of a businessman closing deals, but the careful words of someone who'd had years to think about what he really wanted to say. "Monica, 3 years in federal prison teaches you things about yourself that you spend your whole life avoiding. I learned that I was a coward who chose money over love, ambition over integrity, winning over being worthy of the woman who believed in me. I learned that losing you was the only real consequence that mattered. The key in this envelope is to a house in Atlanta, 3 blocks from where your grandmother lives. I bought it 2 years ago with money I earned legitimately, consulting for federal investigators, helping them understand how real estate fraud networks operate. It's not much compared to the mansion, but it's clean money, honest money. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forget what I did to your family, to our marriage, to all the people whose lives I destroyed. I'm asking if you're willing to find out who we might become if we start over with the truth instead of lies. The choice is yours. It always should have been. Daniel. Monica looked up from the letter to find Daniel watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. Hope mixed with acceptance, wanting something desperately, but prepared to let it go if she said no. Atlanta, she asked. Your roots are there. Your family, your community, the school where you used to counsel kids who needed someone to believe in them. I thought maybe we could build something real in a place that actually means something to you. The mansion felt different as Monica considered his words. The marble floors were still beautiful. The crystal chandeliers still cast perfect light, but had never felt like home. It had been a stage set for a life that wasn't real, a monument to wealth that belonged to other people. What about the victim restitution work? Could be done from anywhere. Most of the families you've helped are scattered across the South anyway. Atlanta's actually more central for that kind of advocacy work. Monica walked to the library windows, looking out at grounds that had been maintained by other people's stolen money. In a few months, the mansion would be sold to pay final restitution claims, and this chapter of her life would close forever. The question was whether she wanted to start the next chapter alone or with the man who'd caused so much of the pain she'd spent years healing from. I'm not the same person you married, she said. Good. That person deserved better than the man I was. Daniel joined her at the window, standing close enough that she could smell the institutional soap that still clung to his clothes. I'm not asking you to go back to who we were. I'm asking if you want to discover who we could become. Monica closed her eyes, remembering the last time they'd been truly happy together. Not the expensive dinners or exotic vacations, but a quiet Sunday morning in their first apartment, reading newspapers in bed, making plans for a future that seemed possible then. Before Daniel's success had twisted their love into something possessive and performative. There are conditions, she said finally. Name them. Complete transparency. No hidden accounts, no secret business deals, no decisions made without discussion. If we're going to try this, we're going to be actual partners. Done. Counseling. Both individual and couple therapy. We have years of damage to work through, and I won't do it alone. Already scheduled. I found a therapist in Atlanta who specializes in rebuilding relationships after betrayal. Monica turned to face him fully. And if I decide after 6 months or a year that this isn't working, you let me go. No guilt trips, no manipulation, no trying to make me stay out of obligation. Daniel nodded, and she saw something in his eyes that had been missing throughout their marriage. Respect for her autonomy. Acknowledgement that love meant giving someone the freedom to choose. What made you change? She asked. Prison conversations with men who'd lost everything that mattered while chasing things that didn't. Watching families visit other inmates. Seeing what real love looked like when it wasn't based on what someone could provide. Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. And reading your victim impact statement at my sentencing hearing. I didn't think you were listening. I was listening to every word, especially the part where you said the worst thing I'd done wasn't stealing money. It was making you doubt your own judgment about who deserved your trust. Monica remembered writing that statement, pouring years of betrayal and disappointment on a paper, trying to make a judge understand that financial crimes had emotional victims too. She thought Daniel would see it as an attack, another punishment to endure. I want to be someone worthy of your trust again, Daniel continued. Not because I think I deserve it, but because you deserve to be with someone who values that gift properly. Outside, autumn was turning the mansion's manicured trees into something wild and beautiful. Change wasn't always destruction. Sometimes it was necessary clearing away to make room for new growth. When do you know it's time to leave the past behind? How do you trust someone who hurt you, even if they've changed? Because Monica was about to make a choice that would define the rest of her life. She picked up the key to the Atlanta house, feeling its weight in her palm, like a promise of possibilities she'd never imagined. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them, changing everything and nothing, adding complexity to a decision that was already impossibly difficult. The pregnancy wasn't planned. but it forced them to answer the question they'd been avoiding. Were they truly ready to build something lasting? Daniel's face went through a dozen emotions in the space of seconds. Shock, joy, fear, and something that looked like wonder. He reached toward Monica's hand, then stopped himself, asking permission with his eyes before touching her. "How long have you known?" he asked softly. 3 weeks, since right after the trial ended. Monica looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how familiar they still felt despite everything that had changed. "I was going to tell you before we made any decisions about Atlanta." They sat in the mansion's breakfast nook, morning light streaming through windows that had witnessed the beginning and near destruction of their relationship. The irony wasn't lost on Monica that she was discussing the future of their family in a house built on the ruins of other families' dreams. "Are you?" Daniel started, then seemed to realize how loaded any question about the pregnancy would be. "I'm keeping the baby," Monica said firmly. That decision was never in question, but it does complicate things. Ow! Monica pulled her hands free and walked to the kitchen island, where she'd been organizing the final victim restitution files. "Because I won't bring a child into the same kind of relationship we had before. I won't raise a daughter or son to think that love means accepting lies, manipulation, and betrayal as normal. What if I can't change enough? What if the counseling doesn't work? Or I slip back into old patterns?" Daniel's voice held genuine fear. "What if I turn out to be the kind of father who damages his kids the way my father damaged me?" Monica studied his face, seeing vulnerability that the old Daniel would never have admitted to. "Then I'll leave, and I'll make sure a child knows they have one parent who chooses integrity over convenience." "That's fair, is it? Because that's exactly what my mother did when my father couldn't stop gambling away everything we had. She left, moved back to Atlanta with my grandmother, and raised me to believe that sometimes loving someone means protecting yourself and your children from their choices." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, processing the parallel Monica had drawn. She'd never told him much about her father, only that he'd left when she was young. Now he understood that her father hadn't left. He'd been left because his addiction was destroying the family. "I don't want to be that man," Daniel said finally. "Then don't be, but understand that wanting to change and actually changing are different things. I've seen you want to be better before, usually right after you've done something that hurt me. The difference this time has to be action, not just intention." Monica pulled out the Atlanta house key, setting it on the kitchen counter between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. "I've been thinking about what kind of life I want our child to have. Not wealthy. We've both seen how money can corrupt people. Not perfect, that's just another kind of lie. But honest, stable, built on trust instead of fear." "What does that look like practically?" "It looks like you keeping your consulting job, helping federal investigators, instead of going back into private real estate. It looks like me continuing victim advocacy work, showing our child that success means helping people, not using them. It looks like living in a normal house in a normal neighborhood, where our biggest problem is remembering to take out the trash." Daniel smiled, and Monica realized it was the first genuinely happy expression she'd seen from him in years. "You're describing a life I never thought I wanted, because you were taught that wanting less was failure. But I'm talking about wanting different things. Things that can't be stolen or lost or used against you." They spent the morning walking through the mansion one last time, talking about memories both good and painful. In the master bedroom, Monica packed away their wedding photos, not throwing them away, but storing them as reminders of lessons learned. In Daniel's office, they reviewed the final victim restitution payments, ensuring every family affected by his crimes had received compensation. "There's one more thing," Daniel said as they prepared to leave for Atlanta. He pulled out a small jewelry box, but not the kind that held engagement rings. "This was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died, said to save it for someone who understood that love isn't about what you can take from someone, but what you're willing to give up for them." Inside was a simple gold necklace with a small charm. Nothing expensive or flashy, just a piece of jewelry with sentimental value. Monica had never seen it during their marriage, which meant Daniel had been saving it all these years. "She sounds like a wise woman. She would have loved you. And she would have been disappointed in the man I became after she died." Daniel fastened the necklace around Monica's neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. "But I think she would approve of who I'm trying to become now." As they drove away from the mansion, Monica watched it disappear in the rearview mirror. The building would be sold within the month, probably to someone who saw it as a status symbol rather than a warning about the cost of ambition. But for Monica, it would always represent the place where she learned to distinguish between love and possession, between forgiveness and enabling. How do you know when you're ready to build a family with someone? What does it mean to truly trust someone with your future? Because Monica was about to discover that sometimes the greatest act of faith is choosing to believe people can become better than they were. The road to Atlanta stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities and uncertainties, leading toward a life neither of them had planned but both were willing to build together. Their future was beginning, not with grand gestures or expensive promises, but with the simple decision to drive toward home. They left Dallas as damaged people clinging to each other. They arrived in Atlanta as partners ready to build something beautiful from the ground up. The house in Atlanta was nothing like the Dallas mansion. 2 stories of weathered brick, a front porch with paint peeling around the edges, flower beds that needed attention, and a backyard big enough for children to play in but small enough to feel safe. Monica stood on the sidewalk holding Daniel's hand, 8 months pregnant and finally understanding what home was supposed to feel like. "It needs work," Daniel said, unnecessarily. Everything worth having needs work. Their neighbors came out to meet them, Mrs. Washington from next door with a casserole and questions about when the baby was due, the Johnson family from across the street with 3 kids who immediately started planning how to include the new baby in their neighborhood games. This was what Monica had missed living in the mansion, the casual intimacy of people who chose to care about each other. "You're the counselor who used to work at Washington High," Mrs. Washington realized. "My grandson Marcus was in your conflict resolution program. That boy credits you with keeping him out of jail." Monica smiled, remembering Marcus, angry, brilliant, convinced the world was against him until he learned to channel his energy into debate team and student government. "How is he doing?" "Graduating from Morehouse next month. Pre-law. Says he wants to help kids the way you helped him." As they settled into the house, Monica marveled at how different their relationship felt when it wasn't performed against a backdrop of stolen wealth. Daniel fixed the leaky bathroom faucet himself, instead of calling expensive contractors. Monica planted vegetables in the backyard, instead of having landscapers maintain elaborate flower arrangements. They cooked dinner together, argued about paint colors, and fell asleep on a secondhand couch watching movies that didn't cost them anything. The counseling sessions were hard, hours of unpacking years of resentment, betrayal, and learned patterns that didn't serve them anymore. Daniel had to confront the insecurity that had driven his need to accumulate wealth at any cost. Monica had to examine her own tendency to excuse bad behavior rather than address it directly. "You enabled him," their therapist pointed out during one particularly difficult session. "Not maliciously, but you made it easier for Daniel to avoid consequences by always finding reasons to forgive him." "I thought forgiveness was supposed to be unconditional." Forgiveness can be unconditional. Trust has to be earned back through changed behavior. They learned to fight fair, to disagree without attacking, to support each other without losing themselves in the process. When Daniel struggled with the temptation to take a high-paying job with a questionable real estate firm, Monica didn't lecture him about integrity. She helped him remember why he'd chosen a different path. When Monica worried that pregnancy was making her too vulnerable to make clear decisions, Daniel didn't dismiss her concerns. He helped her identify what she needed to feel secure. Their daughter was born on a rainy Thursday morning in March, screaming her way into the world with the kind of determination that made both parents laugh through their tears. They named her Grace, not because they were particularly religious, but because Grace had saved their relationship when justice alone wouldn't have been enough. "She looks like you," Daniel whispered, holding their daughter for the first time with the careful reverence of someone who understood how precious second chances could be. "She looks like herself," Monica corrected, but she was smiling. Grace had Daniel's dark hair and Monica's stubborn chin, but her eyes held something entirely her own, curiosity about a world that would hopefully treat her better than it had treated her parents. The victim advocacy work continued from their Atlanta home office, now focused on helping families navigate the complex process of recovering from financial crimes. Monica found that her own experience with betrayal and recovery made her more effective at helping others rebuild their lives. She understood the specific pain of discovering that people you trusted have been lying to you, and she knew the long process of learning to trust again. Daniel's consulting work with federal investigators led to testimony in dozens of cases, helping prosecutors understand how sophisticated fraud networks operated. He traveled frequently, but always came home with stories about cases where his testimony had helped families recover stolen property or see criminals face consequences. "Do you ever miss it?" Monica asked one evening as they sat on their front porch watching Grace take her first tentative steps across the yard. The mansion, the money, the feeling of being important? Daniel considered the question seriously, watching their daughter laugh as she grabbed onto the porch railing for support. "I miss feeling powerful, but I don't miss being the kind of person who needed to take power from other people to feel worthy." Their life wasn't perfect. Daniel still struggled with anxiety about money, sometimes waking up in cold sweats about bankruptcy and failure. Monica still fought the urge to fix problems by avoiding them rather than addressing them directly. They went to counseling, argued about household responsibilities, and worried about whether they were setting a good example for their daughter. But their problems were honest problems, faced together by people who'd chosen to be accountable to each other. When Grace said her first word, "Dada," while reaching for Daniel during one of his work trips, they called him together so he could hear it over speakerphone. When Monica got offered a position heading the victim advocacy program for the entire Southeast region, they made the decision together about whether the opportunity was worth the additional travel time. On Grace's second birthday, they threw a party in their backyard with neighbors, friends from Monica's work, and families they'd helped through the victim restitution process. The Martinez family drove up from Texas, bringing their son, who was now 10, and still talked about the horses he'd had before Daniel stole their ranch. "I want to thank you," Mrs. Martinez said to Monica as children ran through sprinklers in the March heat. "Not just for helping us get our land back, but for showing us what forgiveness looks like when it's paired with justice." "What do you mean? You could have hated Daniel forever. You could have walked away and never looked back. Instead, you held him accountable and gave him a chance to earn redemption. That takes more strength than staying angry." As the sun set over Atlanta, Monica sat on her front porch holding her daughter, watching Daniel clean up party decorations with the same careful attention he'd once given to closing million-dollar deals. This was success. Not the accumulation of wealth or status, but the patient building of a life based on love, accountability, and the daily choice to be worthy of the trust others placed in you. What does it mean to truly come home? How do you know when you've found where you belong? Share your own story of finding home in the comments, because sometimes the best love stories aren't about perfect people, but about imperfect people who choose to grow together. Grace fell asleep in Monica's arms as the neighborhood settled into evening quiet, secure in the knowledge that she was loved by parents who had learned the difference between wanting someone and cherishing them, between possessing someone and partnering with them, between building a life and building a legacy worth passing on. If this story of second chances and true redemption touched your heart, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories that prove love can survive anything when it's built on truth instead of lies. Tell me in the comments, do you believe people can really change? And remember, sometimes the best love stories aren't about perfect people, but about imperfect people who choose to grow together.